What's up, tubers? Tio here, Simplistic Fishing, coming back at you tonight for an interesting little video. This time we're going to do some talking about how to prepare for a bass tournament. I'm going to walk you guys through how I prepare for an upcoming bass tournament, especially on a lake that I've never been to before. Actually, I'm lying because I've been to this lake once, but we're going to pretend I haven't been there because, again, only been there once, don't even remember it. So, brand new lake, go into it. I'm going to show you how I would approach this lake prior to the tournament and how I would do my pre-fishing prior to the tournament. Hope it helps you guys. Let's jump in. Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, I've only been to Lake Tyler one time and I just vaguely remember it. So we're going to say that I've pretty much never been to this lake before, not sure what to expect when I get down there. So before, we go out and we fish a lake like this, especially if we're preparing for a tournament like we are for the following weekend, I want to kind of know a little bit about this lake before I get down there. I'm going to try to know as much about the lake before I get there. So that way it will save me time when I'm on the water. So the limited time that I have to pre-fish, I can make the most of it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the Texas Park and Wildlife fishing page. You guys have seen me do this in the lake breakdown several times. So that's the first place that I'm going to go. And I'm just going to kind of scroll around here and just look and see what we've got. It looks like we've got two different bodies of water here that are connected by some type of a canal system. It looks like you've got Tyler West and Tyler East. Tyler West is 2,224 acres. Tyler East is 2,276 acres. So they're pretty much the same. Maximum depth about 40 feet. So we're not talking very deep. Possibly a thermocline there because it is getting pretty late into the summertime. So it's probably something I'll need to pay attention to and just see if there's something there, especially with it only being 40 feet deep. Fluctuation is only about 2 foot. It's moderately clear. So if it's clear and it's in Texas, my guess is there's probably some type of vegetation in this water that's keeping that water clear. If not, it would be like that murky brown color. But we'll see how clear it is, but it says moderately clear. Moderate native vegetation, floating, submergent, and emergent. Some hydrilla in the East Lake. So it looks like, unless the homeowners have gotten rid of it, the East Lake might be where I want to go if I want to go do some shallow fishing, try to find the hydrilla and stuff like that. Or maybe not even shallow fishing, but if the hydrilla comes out far enough, maybe I can get off the edges of it. So I'll definitely want to keep that in mind. Hydrilla on the east side. So it's going to be somewhere over here. We're going to be looking for some hydrilla. The predominant fish species, I'm going for largemouth bass. That's really what I'm looking for. I know there's some big ones in here. Reading in here, it says a canal connects Lake Tyler east and Lake Tyler west. Both lakes have great reputation for consistent largemouth bass fisheries. They're popular with tournament anglers and host frequent night tournaments during the summer. Most fish are between 2 to 8 pounds. With a few over 10 pounds, which I know there definitely are some over 10 pounds. I did notice in here that it said that it had they've added in chain pickerel, which I've never caught one of those. So I'll be interested if I catch one of those. And it says that the white bass were introduced in the 90s from Lake Tawakoni, but really didn't become heavily abundant until 2007. So not too much in there I'm really going to be able to get out of that other than it looks like it's a pretty popular lake. Bass population lake, at least for sure. There is some stuff later on down that it talks about that this is a big weekend lake. So it looks like it might be a washing machine once we get past about 10 or 11 o'clock. So if we're going to catch fish and we're going to do it in the tournament, we need to do it early for sure. Taking one of the other things that I might look at here as well is I'm looking for what type of species the bass can feed on, right? Are there crappie in this lake? It looks like there are a fair amount of crappie. It says crappie are good. And really, are there sunfish in this lake? If there's sunfish, then that means that also opens up the opportunity to look for those beds that those sunfish make in the summertime. And those can be absolute money areas to go fish. So I'm going to be looking for those as well. Coming on down, fishing cover and structure. Aquatic vegetation is abundant in the upper end of both lakes. So definitely, if I'm going to go shallow, I want to get up in the upper ends of both the lakes. Tyler East has good stands of native vegetation and abundant hydrilla. So all this stuff is telling me Tyler East is where I want to go. Tyler West has less hydrilla than native plants. Species has not become problematic, perhaps due to the water level fluctuation, blah, blah, blah. And then here at the very bottom, we'll finish out with this. It says, although fishing in both lakes can be good all year, boating and personal watercraft activity can become very intense during summer months. Most anglers find the early morning and late evenings are the most peaceful times to fish. So that's good to know as well. The other thing I know about this lake is that it has quite a few docks on it. So my next step, now that I've read this and I kind of have an idea of kind of what to expect, is I'm going to switch over to Google Earth and I'm going to use the simplistic fishing breakdown to really study these lakes, and I'm going to study them with you, and I'm going to point out the areas that I'm going to go fish this weekend as far as the pre-fishing. So let's switch over and let's look at Google Earth, and we might have to switch over to Navionics mobile app because my plan is not really to stay that shallow. I plan to bump it up, get a little bit offshore, and see what I can find there. So let's go ahead and switch over, see what we find on Google Earth. Here we are out on Google Earth, and this is going to be probably the second thing I'm going to do when I'm going out to do some pre-fishing. I'm definitely going to go out and look at the simplistic fishing files that we've built, the lake breakdowns, and see what kind of options that we have out here. Now, like we talked about before, I'm looking for more of shady areas. Maybe where we've got some cover and things like that. Obviously, probably going to look at some deep docks, possibly, and then a lot of offshore stuff because right now it's pretty much it's the beginning of August. It's August the 1st. So definitely a time when we should be pulling off a little bit from the bank lines, see what we can find out offshore, but also being very aware that there's probably going to be a thermocline out there somewhere and you can't get deeper than that. So that could limit the offshore spots and could possibly even push the fish more up shallow into those heavy cover areas, where we've got the hydrilla and stuff like that. So I'm keeping all of that in mind as I'm looking at this breakdown. And really just real quick over on the left-hand side, you can see how we have it broke down. This is Lake Tyler. We've got channels and ditches. That's going to be all the green stuff that you see, these tracks, those are the actual channels that we're able to find. So we've got some decent ones here. There's a little creek up here that I really liked right up in here. So I'll definitely want to check that area out. Also up in here, you've got a really good channel that comes way out here. I like that too. Could be a nice little creek channel coming through here. And then you get back in here, some slop and stuff like that. You've also got some pretty good looking stuff over here in these little bays or whatever you want to call them, little coves. Lots of growth on this side, not as much on the other side, right? You get to the other side, there's not as much. So if it's from a shallow standpoint, I'm looking from a shallow standpoint, I'm probably going to start like up in here. This looks like a really good area to start from a shallow standpoint. There's also another couple of those little spots like back in here and back in here that look like they could be decent also over in here. So from a frogging standpoint, things like that, which is probably what I'm going to start with in the mornings, frogging and swim jigging. If this hydrilla and stuff is actually there, that'll be awesome. I don't know if it is or not, because like I said, I haven't been there in a really long time, but if I've got growth up there and I've got the cover, even if it's not hydrilla, if it's just some kind of cover, I'll definitely go fish around that in the morning and see what I can find. And then my plan is from there to pull off and go offshore. So let's select all of this stuff right here. And I just want to, really look at from really what I'm looking at is I'm not really going to look offshore here. I'm really going to be looking at, is there anything close to the bank line or near the bank line that I should really focus on? And as I'm coming down through here, I'm just looking and seeing what I can find. It looks like we do have some pretty good cover out here, maybe some good stuff over here as well. There's some laydowns that are, it's offshore, but it's really up close to the shore, up close to that hump. So that could be a good little thing to find. This thing that I really liked, there were just a couple places that I found that, that I really wanted to focus on for Saturday. And one of them is going to be back here. If you get back in here by these docks, you can see here, it looks, right now, this is a 2021 image. It looks like there's basically nothing there. Like, what the heck are you marking there? But if we come back here and we draw this back to 2013, keep drawing it back until that water goes way down. They said, fluctuation was only 2 foot, but you actually can see it when you draw it back here. You can see it. There's actually a culvert right here. I definitely want to check that out. That's shallow, but it also could be like deep right in that area. So you could have a good drop. So I'm definitely going to check out this area. And then over here, you'll notice it almost looks like there's some beds in here. And those could be like bluegill beds and stuff like that. It could be nothing. Could just be the root systems from this hydrilla that's all died out. But whatever it is, I imagine you could probably find some bluegill up in this area as well. So I'm thinking this could be a pretty good little Shallow area, a little bit offshore, but pretty shallow to go take a look at it. When I zoom the water in or put it up to 2023, you can tell you're going to be feeling like you're fishing deep, but you're not really fishing deep at all. So then let's go move back around here and see what else we can find. We got some debris out here, some laydowns and stumps off these. I think we talked about those, so I'll probably want to take a look at that. And then from a shallow standpoint, didn't really see too much else from a shallow standpoint on this side that really stood out to me. So then I hopped over to Tyler West and I took a look at that. And obviously, what I see over here is a crap load of ramps. So if the ramp pattern was on, that'd be the deal. But that's usually more of a springtime thing. So I'm going to eliminate that because I don't really want to focus on that. Not necessarily eliminate it completely. If none of this other stuff works, I may go hit a few ramps and just see if there's something out there. But I think for this, I'm going to be looking more offshore and then anything really key that might be close to land. And on this side, if you notice it, there's a few things out here, and mainly it's this brush. So if I come out here and I just start taking off all this other stuff and I just focus on the brush. So let's just focus just on brush for right now. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to uncheck. Oh, I thought I could uncheck them all that way. I don't think you guys want to sit here and watch me uncheck all these, but basically we're going to go down here. We're going to remove all this stuff. It would have been easier for me just to select the brush. All right, guys, hang with me. All right, we're going to put the brush in here. Wish there was a way I could select all these and then just, hit check, but can't. So here we go. Here's the brush. So notice on this side, on Tyler East, there's not jack squat for brush, at least that I found. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not brush out there. I'm sure that there's brush off these points. There's got to be. Smaller lake like this, lots of docks and stuff. People have dropped brush off those points. We just got to get out there and scan around and see where they're at. But from a Google Earth standpoint, from what I could find from brush, I didn't really find much on that side, but it did find quite a bit on this side. So it looks like we've also got some rock in here as well. So we can uncheck those rocks just to get a clearer image. So now here we know exactly where the shallower brush is. Well, the one thing that stuck out to me on this lake, especially on Tyler West side, was right up here. I was like, man, that's a lot of brush. Someone's probably got a dock up there or something, or their buddies, but there is a lot of brush right in here. And I guarantee with all of that brush, you've got bluegill, you've probably got crappie, and you got bass. So this is going to be for sure an area that I'm going to want to go check out and spend some time at. Now, you're like, how do you know there's brush there? When you zoom in here in 2023, you can't see it. But if I draw that back to 2013, you'll notice I've got some really good piles here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different brush piles you can fish right there. I mean, that's phenomenal. And then if you go up the lake just a little bit more, there's an isolated brush pile right here too that looks like it's pretty good size. I mean, it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb. So you can tell there's definitely something there. So there's some good stuff out here on Tyler West, even though it's kind of hidden. There's definitely some stuff there. This looks like it might have a little more traffic on this side. I'm not sure. Maybe both sides have a ton of traffic, but definitely some brush piles on this side. You can see them here. So I wanted to point those out because, from a shallow standpoint, again, I'm probably looking at starting in the morning. I'm looking for the shadier side, which Tyler East would probably be the shadier side. Which I guess Tyler West would be too. It's basically focusing on that east bank, when the sun's coming up to keep that shade as long as I can. So if I'm thinking there, if I get in the morning before sunrise, I can fish up in here and see if there's anything in here. And then I can zoom down here and fish over here before it gets too hot, too sunny. And then as the sun's starting to come up, I'll zoom back over here and I can come back in here and get maybe one of these cuts where I've got all these trees and a lot of shade and stuff like that. And then by then, the sun's probably going to be up high. I'm not going to be able to do much shallow stuff. So what I might do is come down here then and maybe fish this where that culvert was, right? And check that out. And then after that, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And that's when we're going to switch over and go over to the offshore stuff. And then, again, I'm not sure how the timing is going to work, but I want to go hit those brush piles for sure. So at some point in the day, I'm going to zoom over here, go through this canal, and zoom all the way up the lake and go hit those brush piles and see if there's anything going on with those, because those look money. And if I can get on that brush pile by it, that could be the deal, because I've got all these brush piles here. I've got that brush pile. I think that's 7, 8, 9, 10 different brush piles I could rotate throughout the day that are fairly close to each other. Remember, this lake's only 2,000 acres. So if that brush pile thing's on, that's going to be money. And that's going to be a really good pattern to run. You've got 10 brush piles and you can just run them until you find the fish. So I'll definitely want to try that at least a few times. Probably when I get down here and start fishing some offshore stuff, that's when I'll pull over and go check out these brush piles. All right, so we talked about the shallow stuff. Now we got to start thinking offshore, right? Because I told you I was going to spend some time offshore as well. And so, from an offshore standpoint, I'm just going to pull this up, and then we're going to go over to Navionics, Web App Navionics. We'll look at this on Web App Navionics so that you can see everything. Or actually, we'll use the mobile app. But as I went through here, and I'm looking at it just from an offshore standpoint, you can see there's quite a bit of offshore stuff on both of these lakes. The ones on Tyler East seem to be a little bit further out. The ones on Tyler West seem to be a little bit closer, but there's definitely a lot of them. So when I look at this, it's like, man, what the heck am I going to do? Well, I told you I was going to start on Tyler East. I'm going to put my focus on Tyler East. I don't know why, but my intuition is saying, let's try Tyler East first. That's what we're going to try. And then watch, we'll spend the whole tournament on Tyler West. But here we go. We're going to start up here on Tyler East. From an offshore standpoint, I'm just going to kind of go through and show you kind of the areas that I would probably take a look at. One would be this point right here. I pulled it down and I looked at it from from 2013, and I'll do that for you guys right here. And when I did that, I don't see a lot of cover around this point or anything like that. But just the fact that it's a point, it's coming off of this flat, this flat's back here with that nice creek bed, creek channel back there. That creek channel's got to come somewhere. Maybe it's here, or maybe that creek channel actually flows down here. We'll look at it here in a minute. We're going to find out. But I'm still going to probably put some focus onto that point for sure. So let's go back. I got to click it back to 2021 or 2020. Yeah, 2021 in order to get these offshore spots to show up. But as I move down, just some good stuff right in there would be good. Right out in here, we're going to look at this stuff from the Navionics stuff. I just wanted to kind of show you what it looks like from the Google Earth side. But here's your offshore stuff. Kind of hard to tell on the offshore stuff without going and looking at the contour map, which is what we're going to do here in just a second. So as I went through that, I actually hopped over, looked at my contour map, which we're going to do here in a minute. And then I selected the ones that I thought were the key ones that I wanted to try out. I think I had 15 spots or something like that total. And that was with the shallow stuff. So it gave me a pretty good spot to start with. So as I did that, what I did is I created these things called tourney spots. And so what I'll do here is I'll take these tourney spots and I'll load them up into my Google Earth on my phone. And when I go out on the lake, I'll have these tourney spots there. Now I'll have the waypoints themselves on my graph. So I'll have all the waypoints, everything, not just the ones that I selected, but everything out there. But I'll have this on my phone. So when I'm on my phone's basically going to say, look, these are the ones I really want to focus on today. But the good news is still got them on my graph, right, as well. So if I want to pull off and do that ramp pattern, I've still got all those ramps. I can do all that as well. So anyways, this is how I'm going to break it down and how I'm going to attack the lake. So told you I was going to start up here. There's some good vegetation. There's some good points there. There's some good debris here that I might want to check out. Good vegetation, hump, right, offshore, more vegetation back in here. Here's that culvert, the other hump, a couple points. So you can just kind of see I'm kind of alternating. I've got shallow here, but I've also got some offshore stuff here as well. As I come down, I'm looking at this offshore stuff. I really like these 2 points. I'll show them to you guys on the Navionics side. This is a pretty cool point here too that I liked because I've got to imagine there's some type of current that comes between these 2 lakes, being that canal is there, or some type of creek channel or something. I have no idea, but that point is right on the outside of where that would be. So definitely something to look at. And there's a hump out here on the other side of this channel, and right on the inside of this hump has got to be where that water flows, maybe where you can get some current if you get some good wind and stuff like that. So I want to check out that offshore spot too. I like this one as well. Main lake points down closer towards the dam, a little bit deeper water. And then as we move up here, I kind of skipped all that stuff over here. And I went up here, and I'm going to hit those brush piles, right? I've got those brush piles marked. Those 2 spots are actually, that's 6 brush piles there, and that's 7. So if I get that going on right here, I'm immediately going to go back to my waypoints where we talked about the brush, and I'm going to look at where all that brush is. I'm going to run those 10 brush piles if one of these ends up being, on. So, and then we've got a little bit of rock up here. We didn't talk about this spot. Forgot to tell you guys about it, but it doesn't look like much here. But if we pull this back to 2013, when the water was stupid low, you can see there's actually some rock out off the edge of this point. So that can be a good little Carolina rig, wobblehead, something like that to take a look at. Good main lake point, close to a little bit of a pinch point there, not a lot of room for them to move around. So definitely a good spot to take a look at. So those are the tourney spots. Let's go switch over. I'm going to take this offshore stuff. I'm going to import it into my phone. And then we're going to look at those offshore spots for my phone and just kind of go back and talk about the spots that I thought were key. And you'll be able to see them from a contour perspective. Okay, so we've gone out and we've looked at the Texas Park and Wildlife page, got some lake characteristics, lake levels, kind of what to expect, what they're feeding on, what type of baits out there, kind of fish, all that good stuff. So we got that information. Then we switched over to the Google Earth side and we looked at it really more from a shallow standpoint, right? Seeing if what types of brush piles we could find when the lake was down, stuff like that, rock, which there wasn't very much rock. And then anything else that we may have been able to find from the aerial image. So now that we're done with the Google Earth image, our last step is to switch over to the Navionics app and look at the contours on this lake and see what we can find from an offshore standpoint. So we saw some good stuff from the offshore standpoint just because we were able to pull the water down, but this kind of verifies where those ledges are, the drops, the humps, the stuff like that, the points that we want to be looking at. So as I mentioned, I'm going to pay more attention to Lake Tyler East than I am Tyler West for my pre-fishing. Hopefully I'm not wrong there. It's just a pure guess. But just based on what I'm seeing, it kind of looks like Tyler East is kind of maybe more up my alley for starting off shallow, frog and swim jig and stuff like that, and then going offshore. So what I did was I imported in all those tourney spots that you saw from the Google Earth side. I imported those into my Navionics mobile app. So that way I'd have them all here and I could kind of walk you guys through what I've picked out as far as my planning for the tourney. So I'm going to start up here at the top and just kind of show you guys what we have here. Here's where we had the vegetation, right? The shallow stuff. Now there was a point that was over here from an offshore standpoint, this one right here. And I was hoping that this creek channel would come up here and touch this point, but it doesn't. So I'll probably just go by and scan this point and see what I can find. Now what I did was I added in a new point right down here, which I really should have moved over more towards right around that point, because if you zoom in, you'll notice there's a creek channel that comes right here and it comes really close to this point. So that could be a possibly good spot to take a look at. It's definitely not, it doesn't stick out like some of that other stuff, but definitely something that we want to take a look at. We got the shallow stuff over there with the vegetation to the left. Again, here's another good offshore spot. You got an island that comes out here. It could be good out here, and it could be good right here in the saddle as well. The saddles can always be really good spots to take a look at as well. Then we're going to move down. Now, this is pretty cool. I didn't see this from a Google Earth standpoint. You can't tell, but there's a giant flat out here on Tyler East. You can see it out here. It's 5 foot, 6 foot, giant flat, right? Well, if you go out and you look off the edge of that flat, you'll notice that you've got a creek bed that runs right up against it. So right in that area, somewhere in that area, people have probably dropped brush. There could be rock there from the creek channel washing it out. It just looks like a primo area to go find some good offshore fish. So I'm going to spend some time there for sure. That's probably the best looking spot I've seen so far that we've been breaking down. Here's more shallow stuff up here. Here's more shallow stuff back here. And then out here, again, another new mark that I made as I pulled up the contours and I was looking at it. What I noticed was obviously there's a hump out there. But if you get off the end of this hump on the south side, there is a pretty good drop right there. It goes from 4 foot all the way down to 21 foot. So definitely fishing in and around the back side of this hump. Definitely, of course, the wind's going to make a difference too, but definitely that's going to be an area that I want to look at as well. And then just real quick, I didn't notice this on Google Earth, but it says there's some rocks out here, out closer towards these docks. If there are, you may want to go check those out. I'm not going to mess around with those because I'm going to stay focused on what I've selected here, and hopefully I can find something. We've also got a nice little, big flat that comes out here, or point, whatever you want to call it, but it's definitely pretty shallow. And off the edge of that is where you can kind of get a little bit of a ledge. So I'm definitely going to check that out, kind of probably scan around these areas and just see what I can find over in here. Now, also, we've got the hump that we talked about. As we move down here, looking more offshore, this looks absolutely beautiful. We've got the creek channel that comes here. and it zooms around this way, you've got a hump that's right here at 13 foot. Well, on the outside of that hump, kind of the southeastern side, you've got a submerged bridge and you got some pretty deep water, 23 foot, 24 foot. So definitely just a primo spot again to take a look at. If I only had two spots to look at for the whole day, I'm going to hit that spot and this, and not that spot, but that spot right there. Those two spots right there would be my two favorites so far. Now, as we're looking here, just real quick, I won't waste too much time, but we got some points here that we marked, right? There's the submerged culvert we marked. Some really good points out here as well. This one looks really good. It looks cool. This actually looks interesting right in here, just the major breaks this thing has. But then as we zoom over more offshore, right, another good little point there. Creek bed coming out here and zooming in and getting close to this little hump that's out here at 15 foot. That could be a nice area too. Probably my third favorite spot so far that I've seen as far as what I'm comfortable with. We've also got some more out here. A little point out here. It's actually got a hump, or you could call it a point. Almost looks like a point with a saddle right there and then a little hump right here at 16 foot. So maybe some stuff going on in there. You've also got some pretty good stuff back here too. Out here it's 16-foot hump. Pretty good little spots right in there, right off the outsides of that hump. And then on top of the hump too, if they're up there feeding. And then as we pull back, I didn't see too much more over here, but I do like this spot in here. I'm not sure, can't remember if I talked about it from a Google Earth standpoint, but I definitely had it marked for you guys. But there's got to be some kind of current or something that comes through this little canal. There just has to be. It's so narrow and connecting the two lakes, and maybe it's wind oriented, or maybe it always goes one direction. But as you look at it, I was hoping there would be a creek bed or something in there, and there definitely is. Here's the creek bed. And so this point right here that comes way off and extends way off out here, this could be pretty good. I was hoping that creek bed would slam up against it. It doesn't. It actually slams more up against here. So I'm going to fish here, and I'm also going to swing over and take a look at here too and just see if the fish are attracted to either side. But that's got to be a good pinch point, right? It's got to be a good spot where you've kind of narrowed down the water, and they should be somewhere on one of those sides, either on that point or on the flip side where that creek bed is. Then we're going to come over here, kind of just following that creek bed ride, kind of lose it through here, but this another good pinch point right here off the edge of this hump comes out, but it stays pretty shallow up here, and then it has the drop right in here. So right there in that little shallow area. Then I'm going to move back just a couple more offshore spots. There's another good offshore spot that we talked about. Good, long, extended point. That one looks good. We come up here on Tyler West. I didn't have a lot marked here, remember? Here's one of the offshore spots I marked. You can tell I got a nice little flat here with some ledges going out the side of it. Up here, I think, is where we get into our brush. Yep, that's where those 6 brush piles were. Then there was another one that was way up here, that brush pile there. And then I marked this one. This will be our last spot I think we take a look at. I guess there's one more. But I marked this spot. I did not see this on Google Earth, but it says there's a submerged bridge out here. Now, is there? I don't know, but it says there is. So I'm going to check this point out, but I'm also going to swing over and check out that submerged bridge and see if there's anything out there off that bridge. And then last but not least, when you get up here on Tyler West, up to the, I guess, to the no wake zone, you get up here and there's actually some rock that was right here off that point that I showed you guys on Google Earth. And if you zoom back a little bit, there's a creek channel right here. That's probably what was creating that rock. So definitely right here in this area, I would check that out. And so, guys, that's about it. That's how I would plan for my tournament for Lake Tyler. In fact, I'm actually going to be going there this weekend. Maybe I'll get lucky and be able to do some live camera action for you. I've had some issues with my GoPro the last couple months, so hopefully I can get that thing going and get you guys some live film. But if not, this will at least walk you guys through how I would plan for a tournament and how I would go out there. I'm very deliberate on what I fish. I'm only going to fish those waypoints that I showed to you guys. I'm not going to alter off my plan or anything like that. But I am going to keep an open mind. So again, like we talked about on the Google Earth side, if I've been hitting this offshore stuff and the shallow stuff and not doing good, and all of a sudden I pull up to one of those brush piles, it's only going to take one. If I pull up to that brush pile and I start catching fish, I'm definitely going to switch my plan, pull up all those brush piles. I've got 10 of them to work from, and I'll work those brush piles from that point forward. So I'll keep an open mind, but I'm also going to try to stick to the plan as much as possible. Hey, make sure to go check out our website, simplisticfishing.com. And until next time, I hope you catch your PB. Take it easy.